Project 5 is a mixture of a few different things that we've worked on this semester. Let's actually start with Part 2. There are two parts if you look at the assignment sheet. Part 2 is going to be the most familiar thing if you've been paying attention and doing your journals and using the heuristics that we've used all through the semester. Then you're going to have a lot of experience doing what you were asked to do in Part 2. And essentially, that's where we ask you to do a little bit of audience analysis and a little bit of rhetorical analysis with your document rather than with somebody else's. So basically, I want you to be very clear about who your audience is, how you've pitched this particular argument to them, and what kind of strategies you've used to engage that audience. Now that means that you want to be thinking about what matters to that group of people and who the group of people you're talking to that you must convince in order to achieve the change that you want to change really are. What matters to them? What do they care about? Who is your discourse community? How have you shown that you're obeying their rules? How have you taken their feelings and their values as stakeholders into consideration? And then what kind of language have you used in order to address them? This is a familiar process for you by now, but I want you to apply it to your own argument. It's very tempting, by the way, in this Part 2, for a lot of people to say that their audience is me or their peers in this classroom, or to say that everyone is their audience, that everyone could benefit, or every member of their generation could benefit. Resist that temptation. It may be true in a sense, but I want you to be a little bit more specific. Who specifically, and I keep using that word, but I mean it, do you really have to convince in order to get your point across? What kind of change do you want to see? Who can make that change? How do you pitch your argument to them? That's rhetoric. That's persuasion. That's what I want you to be doing as you work through Part 2. It's essentially two parts: your rhetorical analysis of your language and the evidence and your use of it, and then also show me that you know who your audience is. You have a clear idea. Okay? And in doing that kind of analysis, you may find that you need to make some changes when you're revising. Think of Project 5 as a revision tool. That's how I see it. That's especially true once you start working on Part 1, which in a way is one of the more important things that you'll do. A lot of times you'd be asked to do this kind of thing before you wrote your draft. I think it's more useful to do it afterward once you kind of get an idea of what you want to say. We've talked a lot in this class about how language and thought are connected and how sometimes you just have to put your thoughts into words, into language in order to know what you want to say. Well, you've done that now. You've got a draft. You've done 2 drafts for your peers and then for my feedback. As you look at that draft now, I want you to outline and diagram the structure of your argument. That's Part 1. I've asked you to do 3 things with Part 1. The first is to come up with some kind of visual representation of your argument. It could be a formal outline. That's fine. That's totally acceptable. It could be a table. It could be a graph. It could be a visual metaphor like you see in the Building an Argument House PowerPoint that we worked through before. But what you want to show me in that representation is your main claim, then any subclaims that you have. So things that perhaps aren't the main argument in your thesis statement, but something that's an important enough point that it's almost right there, that you've also got to address if you're going to address your argument. Now, some of you may have 1 subclaim, some of you may have 2 or 3. It's really going to depend on the logistics of your argument. But what's really important is coming off of that main claim and coming off of that subclaim, or showing up as you build your outline, I want to see the reasons. Those are the because statements. So X because Y, all of those Y's need to go underneath your claims and your subclaims. Show me that structure. Then underneath that, I want 2 things. 1 is an examination of the kinds of evidence that you've used and how well that evidence supports the reasons, because remember, evidence is tied to reasons. And then I want also a paragraph that digs into your foundations, so those things that are maybe hidden, but that make it possible to hold up the whole entire rest of that structure, the things that you have to believe or that your audience has to believe in order to accept your entire line of reasoning. If you are still confused about claims and reasons and foundations, please take another look at that material before you dive into Project 5. But my best advice for you with Project 5, it may feel a little unnatural or confusing at the beginning, just start with it. Just go through it, start working with it, start playing with it. You're going to get a chance to revise this just like you do all the rest of your projects. But please do be sure that you include some kind of visual structure And I do want you to be able to see it on paper. And then go through and do an analysis, an honest analysis of all of those other elements, the evidence you include, the foundations of your arguments, who your audience is, and what kind of rhetoric you've used in order to appeal to them. If you have any questions about this, then I'm going to encourage you to contact me. As you go through peer review, you're also going to be working with peers that are familiar with your argument, and so they should be able to hold you accountable. Remember that when you're doing peer review for Project 5 also, you want to hold your peers accountable to being honest about who their argument is for and how well they've built it and support it. Okay, so again, if you have any questions, please email me, and I look forward to hearing from you.